Welcome back. Former Congresswoman Liz Cheney will be again joining forces with Vice President Kamala Harris in an effort to win over Republican voters. Today, the pair will be visiting suburban counties in 3 battleground states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, to hold what the Harris campaign has called moderated conversations. Some of those Republicans in those areas voted for Nikki Haley in the GOP presidential primary before she dropped out of the race. Joining us now to offer a preview, White House reporter for Bloomberg, Akayla Gardner. Akayla, good to see you again. So let's talk about this push here. We've had a lot of it from the Harris campaign here in the final stretch of the campaign in terms of trying to win over some of those disaffected Republicans, the Republicans who voted for Nikki Haley, those who may have cast their ballot for Trump once, maybe even twice, but aren't sure they want to do it again. She'll be back out there with Cheney again today. Has the Harris campaign seen any results so far?
Yeah, well, Harris today is going to those 3 battleground states, the Blue Wall, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and she's really going to counties where Trump saw a significant decrease in his support from 2016 compared to 2020, and where Nikki Haley got between 14% and 33% of the vote in the primary. So they really see these counties as ripe for people who are disaffected by Trump, people who would have liked to see Nikki Haley as a nominee, and they're using Liz Cheney, someone who has been very outspoken about the findings at that January 6th committee, and they're also using these conservative media hosts. So they're really trying to appeal to people who just personally do not like Donald Trump, and it really could be the difference between people staying home or casting a ballot for Harris. And I talked to Jeff Timmer of the Lincoln Project, and he believes that less than 100,000 Republicans could impact the race in battleground states. And that group is really targeting these groups with digital ads, really targeting people to about 1 million voters. And they believe if they can get 10% of those people to back Harris, that will be crucial, because if people could stay home, in their words, that could be aiding Trump. But something that's potentially difficult here, as Frank Luntz pointed out, he's a Republican pollster, is that democracy rhetoric doesn't always resonate with these groups. They feel like it could be politically not credible, and so they really question some of this rhetoric from Harris. But at the same time, Harris and Liz Cheney have really leaned into this issue of painting Donald Trump as a threat to democracy, and that is something that could still motivate base voters.
Yeah, and certainly in a race that's expected to be so close, even taking a sliver of those Republican voters matters. And like a lot of what Harris and her running mate are doing are going into Republican counties to try to reduce the margin of defeat, thinking that will help the overall total. But Akayla, my question to you is, some Democrats think, though they applaud that strategy, but they think that Harris is not doing enough to win over the base, particularly in the big cities, places like Milwaukee, Detroit, Pittsburgh, and perhaps especially Philadelphia. What's their response?
Well, right now they believe that this small slice of undecided voters, that Republicans could be making up a very large portion of that. But that's right, Jonathan. I've heard this criticism from Democrats as well. They want to make sure that they're turning out people of color, young voters, and these democracy attacks is something that could help people get off the couch. If they can convince people that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy and that casting a ballot for Harris is the right thing to do, then that could potentially help them get over the edge, especially in battleground states where those populations are really important.
So staying on the base, you just kind of hinted at it. There's a lot of debate this year about the right way to appeal towards black men. We know the Trump campaign believes they've made significant inroads. Polling, let's be clear, shows Harris still has a huge advantage, but less of one than previous Democratic presidential candidates. What's the Harris team's closing arguments to black men here in the last 2 weeks?
Well, we saw Harris do this interview with Charlemagne the God, who is really a popular host and someone who has been critical of her in the past. He has endorsed her, but Democrats are very concerned about this polling that they're seeing with both black men and Latino men. If Trump gets the sort of polling numbers that we have seen so far, he could have the most support from these groups than any Republican really since the Civil War. So this is a huge warning sign for Democrats, and they're really hoping that these polling numbers don't play out. But these are groups that could be important in places like Georgia, like North Carolina, where Harris is not looking as strong right now, but she really could need to pick up some of those states if she does not win all three of the blue wall states.
And we are seeing here in the closing stretch of the campaign a real focus from Harris on those three blue wall states. I mean, she's spent some time in Georgia, spent some time in North Carolina, a little bit less out west. Arizona feels like it might be slipping away. Nevada, we know, will be tight. But I think we should expect the vice president to basically live in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan these next 2 weeks.